Okay, here's the shot, right? And just like how I showed you, looks fine, right? Well, this is what everything looks like outside of the camera. In my last video, I talked about how this animation...
My name? My name is, oh God! Why can't I remember my name?
got me my first full-time job at a studio called Glitch Productions. Well, now I can finally talk about the first project I got to work on at Glitch, the
Gaslight District!
A large part of why I got interested in filmmaking and animation was seeing behind-the-scenes content. It always felt like magic to me. Some people think that learning about how a magic trick is done ruins the illusion, but for me, it always made it so much cooler because I can see that regular people are making these amazing things, and that helps me realize that I too could make something. So let's jump right into the work that I did at Glitch. Before we get into any of the actual shots that were in the episodes, there are a couple animations that came before that. The first thing that I did was test out the Mel rig so I can get familiar with it. This was the test. Now, I was briefed on the show's style, so I knew that they were doing stepped animation, which meant that for multiple frames, the pose would be held. This is common in 2D animation. You often see the drawings held for 2, 3, even 4 frames, whatever is needed for the project. So this was my test at that. Yeah, and looking back at this after spending a whole lot of time on the project, I can see things that, would not fly in the actual production. Big thing here is that Mel's eyes are way too far apart. What we would actually want on the show, this is part of being on model for the show, is that we would have Mel's eyes be a lot closer in, often like to the point of being a bit cross-eyed. So that's the big thing. And then what's nice about the rigs at Glitch is that pretty much all of them have these face lines that we can pose, and they're really neat. I think I overdid it a bit here just because it kind of makes Mel feel like an old lady a bit. And then posing Mel's eyes in particular was always difficult for me. So you got a lot of clipping here and a lot of weird shapes. But yeah, that was the first thing I ever did for Glitch while on their payroll. Overall, I liked the test. It was fun. On to the next thing, poses. There are a couple of assets the team needed to get ready for the episode before we started working on actual shots. One of them was poses. In this case, a good bit of the poses were used for photos that we would see either in the background or in focus, just pictures that we would see in the environment. And so the picture that I got was Mel looking at this like whale eye, which is for the whale belly butcher shop. All of my knowledge to make an appealing pose. And the very first thing I noticed, even looking back at this now, I don't know what I was thinking. I like scaled up Mel's irises way too big. It looks weird. And I say I don't know what I was thinking. I do know what I was thinking. I knew that it was going to be like a picture and it was going to be kind of small. So I was like, I wanted to try and make her eyes bigger so they would be visible from a distance. But even then, like I don't know why I broke the shape. Even if they're gonna be this big, they should be circle. Something like this. Yeah, this is not the version we ended up going with, because as you can see in the corner, this is version 1. And that's because I wasn't getting Mel on model. My thought process at the time was, how would I draw this? Because I knew that Nick, our showrunner, liked 2D animation, and I was thinking, okay, well, how would I personally draw this? And I knew if she was smiling, I would try and bring out a bit of her cheek, and I do like to try and get this forehead shape, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't what the show was calling for. I got notes to try and rework it, so this was the next version, and I definitely think it's a step closer in the right direction. We don't have the really big pupils / irises going on, and if we flip between them, we get a bit more personality. I brought her eyebrows down, took away her eyelids, try and made her feel more Mel, the Mel that we know. Though I was still, you know, trying to keep this, her cheek popping out, to try and her forehead popping out, to try and, you know, get this nice silhouette that I liked personally, because I kept thinking, how would I draw it? And that's not the mindset I should have had. I shouldn't be thinking, how would I draw it? It's how would maybe Nick draw it, or what does the show want? And this wasn't an established rule yet, I think, at that time. You know, this is the pilot, so we're still figuring things out, but not long after, rules were developed for Mel. And then the note I got on this one, Nick wasn't quite a fan of me bringing out her cheek and brow like this. So in the next version, I just toned it back. And we're getting closer, but still not quite there. I think at this point, the big note I got was I was kind of posing her like a Pixar animator, Pixar/Disney, which again is not what we want for this show. At this point, I was like, okay, let's just zero out a whole bunch of Mel's controls and get her close to her sort of default-ish state. And that looked like this. This is not fully zeroed out, but a big important thing for keeping Mel on model was sort of keeping this egg teardrop silhouette for her head, almost like an alien. Because Mel, at least to the other residents of this world, is kind of like an alien, you know, the human. So this was the big difference between my take and a take that was closer to the show style. Her eyes get a lot bigger, right? Really big alien eyes. And as I mentioned, the sort of cross-eyed look, 4 passes to get it right, but it's a start. Okay, so that was the only pose I did. Next is loops. There's a whole bunch of sequences in Gaslight District where there's crowds or something, or we have a bunch of these like background characters, and we need them to move, but we don't want to have to reanimate them every time. So we create these loops that we can sort of throw in the background. So here's one loop I did. It's just this angel sleeping, and I did a couple variations on it. Right, here's another one where it does a little beak scratch, I guess. And I did this little bug, which you actually see in the trailer crawling around. These bugs would be put on a trail and just put wherever they're needed. This loop would be paced around in the shot where the angel mother opens her eyes, which is also in the trailer, I believe. And, you know, at this point, by the time this video is released, you'll see it in the episode. This little guy is one of the first loops I did. He appears in this, like, jar that Mel is reaching for. And I believe he kind of gets he's shredded up, or is used as, like, an ingredient for food. So, poor little guy. And again, all these animations are held for multiple frames. So since we have a frame counter here, this time you can actually see it. It's held for 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frame. So on this one, this entire loop is on 3s. I'm not entirely sure if it got used in the final. This was supposed to help crowds with the angel storm. You know, these like swirling angels, which are kind of like vultures, just going around in a circle. So I did a couple variations on that as requested, but I'm not sure if crowds ended up using them. Okay, on to the fun part. Shots animated for the actual episode. This shot was one of the first shots of the entire episode, so it's neat that I got it, but I kind of can't completely take credit for it, just because the showrunner really liked the animation that Kevin Temmer did for the teaser, so I ended up reusing it. Nick had liked what Kevin had done for the teaser so much that he suggested that we just reuse what Kevin did. So I got the animation from Kevin and I made some tweaks. You know, I made the hair and her scarf move. But this main part where she grips her arm and looks up, that was done by Kevin. The beginning here where she's sort of settling into a pose, that's by me. And the slow turn, I believe, was done by me. The angels, though, here, this one and this one, completely done by me. On to the next shot. A lot of our animations are assigned in what we call an anim set. which means we just get a group of shots next to each other, which helps with the animator noticing any strange continuity errors between shots. So let me play this anim set all the way through.
That is until the prophesized decides to show his face.
We'll break it down by anything interesting I can note. So for this first one, I had fun with Mel running into frame here and hitting this pose. I knew the general motion I wanted, and the boards helped inform that a lot, but I wanted to get the body mechanics right, so I made sure to record a little bit of video reference. Now, I don't think I have that video reference anymore. I can't find it at the moment, but I do know that the animation differs quite a bit from it. It was just sort of a starting point where I can see what the body might do. I know in my video reference the leg doesn't kick out right here, but I wanted that because I believe it was in the boards, and I like it from a animation standpoint. It's just fun to have the leg swing out. Now, in animation, there's these things called arcs and spacing and yada yada. There is something that does bother me just ever so slightly. If we track the point of the knee here, it goes sort of zigzag in its path that it takes. It goes do, do, do. I would have preferred that it goes out here and continues along this sort of arc, if possible. Like, let's see, like, yeah, maybe the leg can be brought out here, and then try and just keep making our way towards this point. And if for any animators watching this, I would encourage you to track your arcs and spacing. If anything looks off in your animation, it usually, a lot of the time, in my opinion, comes down to any weird arcs going on or some weird spacing. For these sequence of shots where Mel is dragging this pin across the screen, for a good amount of these, because I'd like looked at my hand and the hand sort of more or less stayed in the same pose, which made it look like an image just kind of going across the screen, which is like, it looks weird, but it's what happens, I think, realistically. But we're not here to do realistic, right? But I did think the fact that it looked like a still image almost helped lean into the fact that we're heavily inspired by 2D animation along with stop motion. Yeah, so it was like, okay, it reads as 2D animation. I think that's acceptable. But I got notes back and it was like, I think it kind of looks weird with the hand just sort of sliding across screen. And it's a good note because I think it helps make it look better, is just add a subtle bit of rotation to Mel's hand as it's going across. And yeah, I think it helped those shots. With this shot, with Mel turning around and doing this sort of heel rocking, that wasn't originally part of the shot, but it was something, an idea I had when I was getting told about the intent of the scene. I was like, okay, heel rocking might be nice. So I was going back and forth a bit with my lead and like asking, like, okay, what do we think of this? How does this feel? And it's like, I'm not quite sold on the face. I think we might need to ask Nick how he feels about it. But then when he saw it in motion with her doing the heel rocking, he's like, oh wait, no, now I like this. It fit the vibe a lot more. And it's a funny thing I overlooked when first doing this heel rock, is that I sort of just had her hips initially just going straight back and forth. And this is like animation 101. It's like things tend to move in arcs, not straight lines. My lead, Kevin Temer, was like, okay, I like this, but maybe add, ups and downs into there. So she's moving on this arc. And it's like, oh my God, yeah, obviously. Like, I didn't say obviously to him, but it's like, it's more of an obvious to myself. It's like, how could I miss that? Thank you, Kevin. And if you're watching, thanks, Kevin. It helped the animation a lot. This shot's very simple. It's the aforementioned trailer shot where the angel mother opens her eyes. They instance the loop of the angel eyes I made earlier to surround her with. Okay, this shot, probably one of my favorites from the entire episode that I did, and it's one of the earliest shots I worked on. Another big thing in this show is cheating. And what do I mean by cheating? Well, I specifically mean cheating to camera. And what that means is we just want to make sure the image that the camera is seeing looks like how we want it. And we're gonna take pretty much any means necessary to achieve that look. But what does that mean? Well, Jack reaching into his throat here, outside of camera, you can sort of see here with like his shoulder stretching a bit, you know, him getting close to the camera and me getting this arc across the screen. That's all just making sure everything looks good to camera without much regard for how things look outside of camera. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, here's the shot, right? And just like how I showed you, looks fine, right? Well, this is what everything looks like outside of the camera. Okay, that seems fine. Huh, well, there's his shoulder. Okay, but that's not even the most aggressive cheating yet. You can see his hand size changes, and let me hide the sedan here. There you go. What appears as smooth motion in the camera is very jittery and a mess of bunch of body parts moving outside of camera. Look at that. And you can see here, part of cheating is, you know, not just cheating where it is in physical space, but we cheat the size of things. So I wanted to make it feel like the perspective is really forced, which is something we can do a bunch in 2D. And I forced the perspective by shrinking down his hand and gun here, just so we can make it feel like it's further away. I did the same thing here when Mel is right outside the window, because Mel is in actual space really close to Jack. But I wanted him to be able to fully extend his arm and point his gun at her. So if he fully extended his arm as it is right now, it would go through the glass and probably into Mel's face. So I just shrink down his arm. He has a little baby arm. And this is what it looks like outside of camera versus in camera. Heavy cheating, heavy cheating. Here's another one. His head gets huge. And let's get a side by side here so you can see how the actions in physical space translate to what's seen on screen. Like, we want very specific framing from the boards, and I'm trying to do my best to translate that into 3D by making these egregious scaling decisions. And then outside of just cheating, there's other things I was trying to incorporate, right? Like I said earlier, heavily inspired by 2D animation. So animation-wise, I tried to, for this scene in particular, I tried to sort of emulate some of the stuff I did back when I was animating in Flash, which is just sort of popping into poses. And you can see that heavily here, right? He just sort of pops, does a little antic, overshoot, and settle. You can see it at multiple points. Right here, right? Just antic, and then really sharp spacing. Antic, overshoot, settle. Something that I think would have been cool in the actual episode is if, and I don't know how well it would translate, there might be some artistic liberties that need to be done, but it would have been really cool because I actually really like the lip sync I did on Mel here. I really like this segment. I just really like how her whole face moves. But in the final one, you don't really see that. All you see is her eyes. And I really think it would have been cool if they kind of achieved an entirely silhouetted face, but we still see her white eyes and teeth. Almost to sort of achieve what they did with their banner on YouTube. Which is this sort of thing, you know, white eyes and white teeth. It would have been cool if they could have achieved that in 3D. But oh well. I still think the final shot in the render looks great, especially since we got these 2D effects on top of my animation done by an animator named Hussein, who is insane and awesome at what he does, because I love the effects work he did on top of my shot. It just pluses it so much. All right, on to the next anim set.
Come to the whale belly butcher shop. Come to the whale belly butcher shop.
Cool. Fun facts about this sequence. This one I also recorded reference for Ken here. And this reference I actually still have. So here I am in my bedroom wearing the shirt. I didn't actually run this Shamrock Shuffle or whatever. My track coach in high school would kind of just throw these shirts at us, and so I just now use the shirts as like pajama shirts. But I just need to get an idea of what to do for the shot, and so sometimes to be an animator you have to be a bit cringe and try and emulate your character. And I think that really helped this shot. Just Ken here has this 2-frame loop, because I was, again, trying to lean into this 2D inspiration, and we see this, I feel, a lot in anime where characters might cycle between 2 drawings. This shot would be painted over, I believe, at a later point. All I needed to do was do a rough pose for it. So I brought up cheating, and cheating is used like a bunch. The one I showed with Jack in the car, that was like probably the more extreme case of cheating. But sometimes it's a bit more subtle. Take Mel here, for example. There's little bits of cheating going on. Her eye, at its default pose, it would kind of maybe like sit around here. And her ear, right, it would be more of like this little square, like we're seeing it from a side view. And her hair, right, I believe leans forward and kind of goes over her eye. I don't want any of that, so I'm gonna try and cheat it as best I can, and I like the result. The big cheat, right, is moving her eyes further back in her skull so we can get her nose line, and then I rotate her ear so that it's parallel with the camera, so we can get sort of what we do in 2D a lot, where we just draw the ear like this from the side. And then move her hair out of her face as best I can so it's not covering her eyes. And then making use of this is not cheating, but I mentioned those 2D lines that we have available to us earlier, and I use them here. Now this shot right here, with Mel setting the things on the table, probably my least favorite shot to work on in the entire short. The reasoning for it is because at the time I was working on the computer that I had been using through all of college, and it got me through college, but it was really chugging with all these characters in this scene. It was really laggy. The shot, every time I wanted to open it, took like 2 minutes of just sitting there waiting for Maya to open. It was not fun. I hated it. But yeah, outside of that, it was fine. It was just the fact that it was really, really laggy. Thankfully, Glitch at a later point bought me a new computer that I now work on, and it's so much faster. Another challenge of the scene was that we have these 3 rotlings here, and it's such a short amount of time, it's hard to really convey information. So they're supposed to be, ravenously trying to reach the food, but it was just so quick that I kind of just like had this guy slam his face into the plate, and I deformed his eye here, right, to make a smear. And yeah, I did the best I could with that one. All right, on to the next anim set.
We sneak our way into heaven, snatch the egg from its frail old mother, then smash it in front of the whole town. Boom! We're legends!
Well, Paradise Lost belongs to the Virtues.
So this one was pretty straightforward for the most part. It was kind of fun animating Mel's hand and fingers like it was a character of its own. Very sharp timing, and yeah, I feel like this was pretty straightforward. For Mud here, since he's not a main focus, but I didn't want him completely still, I once again used my flash roots to try and give him at least a little bit of motion. That often entails doing an anticipation, an overshoot, and a settle. So when I want him to pop into his next pose, he just does a little antic here, overshoots, right? And then settles. This is what I would do in my old 2D Flash animations. With Mel here, I actually really like the animation she does when she explodes upwards. That, I really like it. Just fun faces, fun motion. It was actually quite difficult for me to get her to shimmy here. It's such a quick movement. Normally, when a person needs to do this, such a drastic shift in position, there's quite a bit of biomechanics that go into play, but I needed to sort of really cheat that to get her there quickly, and that's what I did. Here I'm using, and I'm not sure if it's really visible in the final, but I use those face lines that we get. Usually we use them as creases for the eyes or mouth or brow. Here, I tried to use them as a mouth line. So get a little 2D mouth going on. If I were to give myself some animation critique, I almost feel like right here with her spine, right? And maybe I tried it and it didn't work out. But I almost feel like we should get what's called a C-curve in her back. Right now she's got a C-curve going this way. I feel like it should be the opposite, really, because like this arm's supporting the weight of her body, so it goes up, and her body's, her lower half is dragging behind. So I feel like, you know, her torso slash back should maybe try and bend this way. Maybe. Let's see. Another piece of trivia is for Ken's little bit of acting here. It's hard to tell, but originally in the first pass I did, he's saying Mel, you know, in a very angry voice. And so I wanted to animate it through his teeth. So I had a pass where, you know, his teeth were basically closed here while saying Mel, because he's clenching his teeth saying Mel. But I got the note, since he really emphasizes the L in Mel to sort of open his mouth so we can see a tiny bit of his tongue. It's still hard to see, but that was that note. A little bit of animation I like for Ken here, because it just feels a little slick, and it was a little fun improvised thing I did, was he lets go of the paper here and gravity starts to take it, but then he slams it down. I don't know, it's a simple little thing, but it rubs the brain the right way for me. On to the next anim set.
Besides, I'm sick of you cementing all my buddies!
And whose fault is that? Jack saw your nosebleed. Honest mistake. Not much we can do about that.
Cool, so there's some things to talk about in here. With this little thing right here, these ice picks, ice prongs, I can't remember the name. It's for picking up ice. And so the initial pass was animated with a different rig/model. That rig/model was updated, and then I needed to sort of reanimate this a bit to make this work again. It wasn't a big thing. It was just a little fun fact. Here, her finger does a little smear, right? Just for an extra, to make this little boring shot feel a bit, just a bit more, you know? By this point, I think I fairly got Mel on model most of the time. We got her being a bit cross-eyed here, and she would be cross-eyed regardless, just because she's looking at something right in front of her face. And I went over this in the video where I talked about how I got hired, but you know, just to bring it up again, a nice thing for characters is just eye darts. It helps keep them alive in moments, and you know, shows a bit of thinking. There's that face line being used, right? A neat thing about this show, since it's so stylized, a lot of the times in CG, they're afraid to go fully what's called pixel locked. And what that means is the character is so still that over multiple frames, they are not even moving a pixel. which you can see in Mel here largely. This show, you know, we can do that. We can go pixel locked. In fact, it's encouraged because in 2D animation, we often hit a pose and we stay there because it's a lot of work to redraw every frame just to keep the character alive. So we want to lean into limited animation for this. So Mel sort of hits her pose here, and then her mouth does most of the movement. And then she starts moving again. Same thing with Ken here, right? His whole body's still, but his eyes start moving first. And then this shot right here, actually, I really like it. I like some fun movements slash acting that Ken does, and the sort of face Mel makes in reaction.
And whose fault is that? And whose fault is that?
I'm gonna go into the scene because there's actually some fun cheating going on here. It's actually really funny to look at. Maybe a little horrifying. But yeah, I really like the shake on Ken when he says, whose fault is that? Right? This little overshoot he does with his head. I just like it. And Nick really likes to try and get a strong silhouette. And what that means is there's a lot of focus on the outline of a character. So this isn't the best quality, so it's harder to see, but something realistically, right, we'd probably get his inner cheek here, right, filling up this negative space. But I pulled it back so we can very clearly see his profile and his mouth is open. And his teeth, since they contrast the skin, really help get this outline, which conveys a negative emotion typically. Usually with Ken's model, you might see a bit of his other eye, but I cheated his eye backwards just so he wouldn't see it. Mel, there's no crazy cheating going on, but I just like the sort of look she has in her face as he presses the prongs against her face. It's like the cat meme where it has like a blade or something pointed at it, those sly cat. Okay, so we have the scene open, right? And you can see Ken right here, much crisper than the video export I was showing you. We've got this side profile. What did I need to do to achieve that look? Well, let's rotate Ken, and my God, he is looking like a creature. Here's some more cheating, right? In 2D, I feel like we'd get this like strong shape with his brow, but we don't really get that naturally with it, so I needed to rotate it so that it's perpendicular with the camera. And then his eyes pushed back into his skull, you know, whatever it takes to get the shot. I think it worked out well. Okay, the fun fact for this shot, I did an initial pass on it, and Nick gave the note that it felt way too polished, too spliny, and what do we mean by that? Even though it was on 2s and 3s, he felt it looked too much like computer animation. And so, which is a reasonable no. The show has a look. So what I did was basically just delete a lot of my keys and stay in poses for even longer and more still. On to the next anim set.
We are pleased, and you are a filthy, rancid rotling. You may proceed.
So just to start off, I love the voice acting on Diligence here, specifically when he says, a filthy, rancid rotling. It just, I don't know, the delivery on that is great for me. So some things I tried to incorporate was the little angel sort of copying what Diligence does here, just slightly. I think that idea got carried through into other shots, so that's nice. There's a bit of cheating going on with Mud's face here. Not heavy cheating, but just it's a sort of thing where it would look awkward when not looking at camera. This shot here, I actually like how Mud moves back. There was an older pass of it, and it's the same note I got with Ken. Well, a sort of similar one, that it felt a little too perfect, sort of 3D. And the other note was that it almost felt a bit too animated, because before it had his hand sort of come up in front of his face here, something like this. And Nick's note was it just felt like a bit too much, so let's hide Mud's arm there And that gives us space for Diligence to get even closer in Mud's face. So a really good note. And let's see if I have the old version. Okay, so I got the old version, and I can see the difference in framing. Looks like Nick also had me move him closer to center frame, which is a nice note, because it kind of looks weird with him all the way up here, to be honest. His neck feels really long. And if we play it, right, I had the hand come up right in front, which leaves Diligence this like very little space to sort of come in and invade his personal space. So it's a really good note from Nick. Shows strong his vision is, and it shows how good he is at trying to convey an idea, right? We want Diligence to feel like they're invading Mud's personal space. Why not give him more of the screen space? Like I said, I really love the delivery from Diligence here, and I like the head shakes I had for Diligence to just really show that he's seething with this like hatred for rotlings.
A filthy, rancid rotling.
Alright, on to the next anim set. This one is where Redhead eats an angel. The angel landing in the shot here, right? It has these wings, but there's actually only two versions of the angel that we have, and that's the winged angel and the non-winged angel. The winged angel doesn't actually have any hands, just wings. So what I had to do for the shot was take the winged angel, put it into the scene, and then sort of rip off its arms, which are its wings, and attach it to the hands here. And you can actually see, if we zoom in, there are two arms here. Right? Yeah, and it's more apparent right here. Since it's such a quick movement, you know, it's not super noticeable, I hope. And then since I don't have to worry about motion blur or anything on this show, as soon as I'm done with the wings, they kind of just, I think, retreat underground, and I actually have the scene open. So we can take a look. There's the angel. And then when the wings disappear, if we look underground, there are the wings. And if we look maybe further underground, let's see, it's somewhere in the scene. Ah, it's just standing right here without its arms. Thank you for donating your wings to my shot. This is where these little markings are from the boards. And it's the Angel Storm that I mentioned that I made the loops for. These loops. Don't know if they were used, but yeah, that's where the Angel Storm would have been. This was a little fun thing, this transition, when we were assigning the shot to me and discussing it in a call. There were a couple different ideas on what to do. All we sort of knew at the time was that we wanted some sort of transition using mud. So maybe there was an idea of like maybe him taking a drag of his cigarette and, you know, blowing smoke onto the screen for the transition. What I ended up doing was trying to use Mud's body itself, because there was the other idea of maybe he just walks towards the screen and, you know, as he takes up the whole screen space, you know, we can do like a fade or something. I wanted to try and do a wipe transition. So I just had him sort of slither across like a snake. And then we would get the next shot, which is not animated by me. Here's the next anim set, and one of my favorites. And the reason for that is because it's kind of grounded, right? It's the more melodramatic moments in the episode, and I don't know, I just really like how it came out. Mel getting pushed forward here by the wind is actually another cheating to camera moment, and I'll show you what that looks like outside of camera in a moment. I just want to mention this little hand gesture here, I believe was inspired by, and I'm bad with video games, Nick mentioned it to me, it's Elden Ring, or is it Dark Souls? It might be Dark Souls. Gamers, any gamers out there, comment down below, what's the reference? Something with a bonfire. Okay, here's the shot. right? And there's cheating even on a simple level. I drew upon the experience that I gained from prior sequences, right? And I mentioned how Mel's eyes would normally bulge out in front of her face line here. So, like I did earlier, I pushed her eye back. I also posed her lashes so they were clearly silhouetted toward camera. And so what her face looks like from outside camera view is both eyes pushed back, but the one outside of camera really far pushed back, just so we don't see it, right? Because if it's at its default spot, I believe, yep, we see it. We don't want to see that. Same with her hair here that's away from camera. With acting, I mentioned in my prior video about getting hired by Glitch that often we lead with our eyes, so I had her eyes dart towards what she's hearing first, and then the rest of her body follows, and then I slowly try and shift her eye back into its place over a few frames, just so it's not broken from there. These feathers were also hand animated by me. And now here's where a bit more aggressive cheating happens, right? I wanted to, with this pose, and you can see it here, I wanted to cheat her hand more close to the foreground. So her arm is stretched out and distorted to try and make it appealing to camera. With stepped animation, the character is held, stays in the same pose for multiple frames. But what about when the camera isn't stepped? Well, what we have to do is animate the character with the camera so they stay in the same spot even as the camera moves. Because what it would look like otherwise is the character moves forward, but then they stay still, but the camera's still moving. So they would basically take one step forward, one step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that sort of thing. All right, we'll look at this whole bit all together. Really fun stuff. And then I really liked that moment with Ken there. Let's start with this first shot. Really fun, and I'm glad I got assigned it. I love doing stuff like this. It actually reminded me of the fight animation I made in 3D, just from a different angle, where characters, launched and they bounce off the ground. Same thing here with, making sure everything looks right to camera. And then character isn't stepped, so I gotta make sure they move alongside the camera so they're not strobing. Silhouette-wise, right, we're trying to... I did an earlier pass of this, and it sucked. It really did suck. Let me try and find it. So here's was the beginnings of a different attempt, right? I didn't make it very far before I realized, this isn't working. I wanted to try and get her sort of close to camera to try and create some depth and have her sort of roll across the ground. But to me, it kind of just looked like she sort of swirls like she's in a washing machine. It didn't work for me. I didn't quite like it and decided, I'm not gonna continue on with this pass. Maybe it could have turned into something, but I don't know. So what we got, this one is where she's further back, right? And we can clearly see her silhouette sort of changing, right? This would be sort of her stretch frame. Even though her body isn't physically stretched out, what we're looking for is a sort of change in the sort of general outline. And this I would treat as her squash and stretch frames. For animators, familiar with the bouncing ball or doot, and then she takes off. Yeah, and so this was just fun to sort of work out and do straight ahead animation for the most part. And then what I did here, to try and really make the impact feel heavier, is I tried to keep her a kind of good distance away from the wall that she's about to hit. So I had her slow down around here, you know, her spacing gets smaller. And she sort of settles into this pose right before, boom, she just suddenly pops over. So like she's here. Let's put on our onion skin, and then she's all here. Right? Really small spacing here. She's just like sticking in this area for a while and then pop. And hopefully it worked out. I like it, and it's just really big spacing. So again, like a bouncing ball, her body sort of contorts, and it's really fast, so I can kind of get away with a lot. Here's our stretch, our squash, and the body's sort of just following. We have our simple side, and I talk about this in my other video. This is the simple side, and this is the complex side. Another thing I did to try and help sell this impact is I actually cheated the wall away for this frame. So not only does she move screen light, but I actually popped the wall over one frame. So from a top-down view, it kind of looked like this over one frame. The wall is here, and then in the next frame, the wall is over here. And I didn't have to worry about a whole lot because everything's moving fast, there's no motion blur. So I think it worked out. This next bit is pretty straightforward. For this bit where Mel has this knife behind her, originally the shot was made where there's two cameras looking at Mel, right? One sort of behind her looking at her back and one in front of her. While with how I posed this animated, it didn't really work out. So I'd have to really, it just wouldn't work. Like her hand was too big and we're seeing it behind there, which would be fine, but I would have really liked to completely hide her hand from this perspective. So what did I do? I brought in another Mel into the scene. Right, so there were two Mels. The other Mel is actually in screen space, like to the left here, just right outside of frame. And I brought the camera over with her. So the one camera is looking at this Mel, and the other camera is looking at this Mel. And, you know, I was hoping it would get approved, and it did. You know, no one really seemed to question it. I'm not even sure if they knew I had two different Mels in the scene until it got into Unreal. With Ken's walk here, we actually had a walk cycle that I just reused for Ken, so I didn't even have to animate that. And then for here, this was just a simple, he's walking forward and does a take. And then this was fun. I really liked animating this because I got to hit some fun expressions with Ken as he yells up into the sky. I made use of those face lines that we have access to, right? These are all the face lines that I posed. Oh, and this one on his eye here too, face line. Leaning into the sort of the flash stuff again, so we have an antic, sort of squashing his face and then hitting an overshoot stretch and then settle. Just really pops into the frame, really sharp. This was just me turning on the lighting in Maya and sort of having two spotlights on his eye to sort of inform how the impact frame, not impact frames, they could be impact frames, whatever frames, these frames sort of, I basically did this temp pass in Maya with this silhouetted view of Ken to inform the departments later down the line how I felt it should look. I actually don't know exactly how it turned out because I haven't seen the episode yet because it's not out at the time of this recording. But I'm sure they did a great job with it. And so once we come out of that, we're here with Ken sort of flipping out, being real angry. And then here, I was actually inspired a bit by Arcane. There's a shot with Jinx, and like I had this motion in my head already, but it was like, man, there's a shot with Jinx. I think she does something similar. And so, you know, what better way to try and improve my animation by looking at these really incredible animator's work. And the main takeaway I had from that is I really wanted to try and offset the two shoulders to break up the movement, make one really feel like it's moving before the other. So that's what I tried to do. And then this face was fun. I really tried to push Ken's expression here and really get different shapes and silhouettes going on. And I'm dragging his jaw here, just really trying to push the expression. Yeah, and then here, there's some small, very subtle cheating going to camera. Since we're getting so far away from Ken, what I did was scale up his facial features, like his eyes and his mouth, and his entire head are getting slightly bigger as the camera moves away, just so he stays readable. All right, on to the next anim set. With this one, I tried to make a really cool silhouette for the Angel Mother. Another moment where I don't know how it translates to the final image that we're going to see in the episode, because the episode's not out yet. I hope the silhouette was achieved, because it was in the boards, and so I tried to get that to come through. There's a little shaking going on here with her. An old pass did not even have the shaking, but Nick realized like he'd really like the Angel Mother to have a bit of shakiness to her to sort of, I don't know, add to her character of how old and I guess decrepit she is. And that's pretty straightforward. This is also straightforward, just Diligence holding Ken by the neck. This was a bit of fun body mechanics that I was just winging. I tried to hit a stretch frame here before getting into like squash. Just his weight being thrown around. And then with this, I tried to frame up his face within this chain, because the chain kept sort of covering Ken's face, but we want to see Ken's face. So I just stretched out this chain to the point it's actually a bit broken. And that's probably in the final episode, but it's fine. And then Diligence gets thrown out, and yeah, it's pretty straightforward. An idea that was mine was the shoulder piece gets knocked out toward camera, because I thought it would be fun to get some depth with that. And then we're on to the final anim set of the episode.
To the black hair. Rotten little human hiding in that egg. Listen, and listen good. You.
Something I wish I had done for this sequence, since it was my last one, I did want to try and push the acting to be a bit better on Ken, but I don't know. I feel like it didn't hit as hard as I would have liked it to. I probably should have recorded reference to try and get more subtle nuances in Ken's acting. I will say though, I like how Mel is posed. And then, you know, the usual cheating that I've brought up before. Cheating her eye backwards to get that silhouette, moving the hair out of her face, getting the eyelash, eye leading the action, looking before the rest of her body. I like the acting here. And with that, that's all the animation I did for the Gaslight District. Whew, that was a lot of talking. Right now, the recording I have is almost 2 hours long. This is gonna be awful to cut down. So I have some closing comments. So what is it like working with the team? Well, the animation team I work with is great. I love the work that they do. They're funny, supportive, and super skilled. They're inspiring to me. Every time I see a shot from any one of them, I think to myself, I could have not done it any better. Each animator has their strengths and unique styles, and I feel that shows in their shots. And I hope to learn a lot from them. Now, I of course mainly work with animators, but some people forget there's a whole production pipeline. Writing, storyboards, modeling, rigging, environments, lighting, set design, VFX, editing, sound design, color grading. Marketing has to get people excited about the show so people will watch it. We have our production managers trying to make sure everything is on schedule. And God, those are just the parts I can name off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are more parts that play here. I mean, just probably look at the credits, right? And then there's even more people probably at play than what's named in the credits. Point is, without any one of those departments, everything comes crashing down. It's really a team effort. This leads me to next talk about Nick. This is his show. I'd say Nick is an awesome showrunner. Whenever you get in call with him and he just starts talking about art and creating things, he just radiates this contagious passion. As someone who also wants to make his own animated series, I just love hearing Nick talk about Gaslight District, because when he does, it immediately conveys how much care he's put into it and genuinely how excited he is about it, which in turn makes the rest of us excited to work on it. Something I thought would be neat to include in this video, just a few words from some of the other animators who worked on it. Most animators wrote out what they wanted to say, so I'll just read what they wrote. This is from Jacopo. Working on GD was a unique experience. I feel like I have learned to have a new conception of animation, which goes beyond the limits imposed by the rules and pushes characters even more. If I have to think about what I liked most, I would say when Nick told me, go crazy with this, I don't care how. In those moments, I felt really free from every point of view, and those who love this job like me will be able to understand. This one is from Jad. I love how collaborative Nick is with us, encouraging us to go ham and do our thing. I felt like we got to do a little bit of our own self-directing in our anim sets, like we were signing each of them with our signature flavor. We got a chance to take charge a bit and suggest different camera choices and timing edits with our intent. I also loved gushing about what the other animators are working on. I feel like the more we progressed in the animation, the more we would soak up and learn little things about each other's animation styles, incorporating that and becoming more powerful, efficient animators in the process. One of the things I noticed when I rewatched the episode is a constant growth in quality from the beginning of the episode to the end. I can't wait to see what we cook up next. This one is from Joe. Gaslight District has been some of the most fun I've ever had animating. Period. Adopting a wholly new animation style for the pilot of a wholly new series was a challenge, to say the least. But every shot was a chance to just go ham, and it was seeing others' work every week that inspired us to keep going harder. But the star of the show is really Nick, our showrunner, for lighting that fire in us and concocting such a sick world. This one is from Eliza. Working on this pilot was amazing. I remember seeing the proof of concept clips way back and thinking, man, how are we going to achieve something this ambitious? And somehow, some way, we all did. We learned a whole new style, were given a lot of creative freedom, and got to watch some amazing goofy reference from Nick himself. It was a total blast. I'm so honored I got to work on this crazy show with its equally as crazy artists. It's been one of the coolest achievements I have done in my career so far. I would love to be able to continue working on the show, so give the pilot some love. This one is from Kevin Temmer. The Gaslight District was such an incredible project to work on because Nick welcomed experimenting and showing our unique creative voices in our shots. I was amazed by how the other animators on my team took the style and pushed it even further than I ever expected. We were able to treat each frame as a painting and utilize the stepped animation approach to create one of the most stylistic projects I've ever worked on. This next one is from Nate. He recorded his, so you get a break from my voice.
Well, hello and g'day. Some of you may know me as Static on some of my socials, but I'm Nate and I'm one of the animators who had the pleasure of working on the Gaslight District. So despite me doing 3D animation for a living, I absolutely adore 2D animation. It is one of my favorite mediums, and I taught myself for a number of years, and one of my favorite parts about working on Gaslight District by a mile was just being able to approach so many shots from that 2D perspective. Nick, our showrunner, would really push us to be so much more clear and dynamic with our silhouettes, and it's like not only did I feel like I was sort of being able to push keys more because of the step style, which again felt more like 2D, but I just felt like I was able to improve so much as an animator along with the rest of the team, and it was all just because of that drive, that passion that Nick was sort of like, it was like a side effect kind of bleeding onto us. And yeah, that was just about development as animators and into skill and ways that we improved through that passion that Nick had. But that's not even getting started on how Nick would celebrate each animator's uniqueness, which was incredible. He would see shots that we had all done and he would be able to pick out who did which shots, but it all still worked together beautifully. And he knew about our preferences and he played into our strengths. I loved the father-daughter moments between Ken and Mel. I liked the wholesome interactions and such. And so Nick tended to let me do a lot more of them. So I request them, and yeah, Nick would be like, yeah, I think you'd be good for this. And that just, it made us all feel like so special, like the way he was able to do that. And yeah, like honestly, I could rant for hours of just about how much of a pleasure it was to work with Nick and the rest of the team with such a dynamic art style, but I am going to keep this short because I know there are other animators who want to put in their words as well. So bye-bye.
Thank you to those animators who took some time to contribute to the video. I really appreciate it. And then I also got a few words from Nick himself, the showrunner for the Gaslight District. Thank you as well, Nick, for taking the time to contribute to this video.
Hello, this is Nick, creator of the Gaslight District, also known as Part-Time Seagull. I really hope you loved the pilot, and I urge you to watch it again and again to find all the little hidden secrets. Working with the animators was a absolute joy on this project. Each and every single one of them shined. Their identities came through in their work, and it's just beautiful to see all those voices and stuff shine. I believe, Genus, this was your first production at Glitch, so that's, a very fun welcome. And thank you all for your insanely hard work, dude. I cannot wait to work with you again.
All right, if you haven't watched the Gaslight District, please go check it out. The team worked really hard on it. I'll end this video by showing all the shots I worked on from the episode without me talking over them. You have a good day.
So, Jack, as I was saying before you bolted on us, my blood, it's...
This way, child.
I'm sick of you cementing all my buddies!
And whose fault is that? Rotten little human hiding in that egg. Listen and listen good. Welcome to the Whale Belly Butcher Shop. Well, for all eternity. That is until the prophesized human decides to show its face.
We sneak our way into heaven, snatch the egg from its frail old mother, then smash it in front of the whole town! Boom! We're legends!
Well, Paradise Lost belongs to the Virtue.
We aren't pleased. And you are a filthy, rancid rotling. You may proceed. Belong to the angels.
I walked upon a melancholy hill, while their song echoed from the chasm deep, the weight of family bonds cementing still, the secrets that our fathers chose to keep.